Imagine if VW and Google created an EV with VW fit and finish and Google providing all the brain power. Sounds intriguing, right? Well, this is the Jiyue Robocar, and it's basically the Chinese version of that. And I know what you're thinking. There must be so much hype, so much frenzy. But imagine no one really caring that much.
Welcome to Wheels Boy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
The Jiyue Robocar sits in a very tough price point here in the Chinese domestic market. The 200 to 300,000 RMB price segment is absolutely cutthroat right now. The Jiyue has three trims ranging from just under $30,500 for the rear-wheel drive base version up to around $43,000 for the dual motor performance. Our test car rear-wheel drive super long-range version starts in the middle at $35,000 US. If you're thinking, gee, I'd like a Jiyue or any other Chinese car for that matter, then send us an email, sales@wheelsboy.cn, and we'll put you in touch with a reliable exporter of Chinese cars. Automotive journalists sometimes are the worst. We get frothy at the mouth thinking about getting behind the wheel of the next big thing, the thing that will light the internet alive, resulting in clicks, engagement, and millions of views. And this car should have been just that. It's made in conjunction with Baidu, China's Google, the proprietor of driverless taxis, a tech conglomerate, and with a car maker that includes brands in its stable such as Volvo, Polestar, and Lotus. It's kind of missed the boat. Don't get me wrong, there's some extremely impressive things about this EV, but time stands still for no man and no EV in the Chinese domestic market. The year since this was kind of announced and unveiled to when it actually started delivering, a top tier spec sheet is now looking pretty mid-level. There's not a bad angle on this car, but there's nothing really that gets me excited either. It's just kind of a smooth jelly bean all over. And in order to try and spice things up, they've gone the route of kind of Gundam style of writing silly things all over the car. I guess design-wise, with it being called the Robocar, you might have expected more fanfare. Take the front end, big fancy headlight cluster and an interactive LED light bar, but we've seen it all before. It's a bit overly sedate. The headlight units are probably the most interesting part up here, with some detailing for the daytime running lights, and they've labeled them. I'm not joking, look here. Robot Unit 1 and Robo Unit 2. Is that for me or for the service tech guy who doesn't know his left from his right? Might be a bit harsh to call the styling sedate, but in my mind, something called the Robocar should be properly outlandish looking, like it seeps tech, like the Hi-Fi Z, although that didn't work out too well for them. Now, I'm a fan of this very short front overhang and the fact that it's a clamshell bonnet. Now that's just nerdy geek stuff and Joe Bloggs isn't really that interested. On a side note though, this is only 4.8 meters long with a 3 meter long wheelbase. That's impressive. Most EVs with a 3 meter long wheelbase are at least 5 meters long. When you look down the side of this car, I think you can appreciate it's not that long with short overhangs at the front and rear, or rather the wheels being pushed completely to the front and back. You do have this kind of plastic cladding here to protect against aggressive car park incidences. But what I really like is this really aggressive rising belt line and also a roof line that drops into the back. It gives you an impression of a very, very sporty roof line without actually impacting headroom that much on the inside. Ooh, optical illusions. I feel the rear is split into thirds: glass, body color, and plastic. You have a huge wraparound 3D LED light bar, which kind of seems like a must-have in an EV nowadays. And of course, an integrated roof spoiler on an SUV, because everyone has one. And yes, mum, if everyone jumped off a bridge, so would I. Solidarity. I was a little unfair though earlier when I said it just looked like a jelly bean, because back here you have a really steeply raked rear windscreen, but it does cause some problems for the boot. That rear rake really impacts on the boot space. Now the numbers say that this rear is 710 litres, and with the seats down it's over 2,100 litres. However, I'd argue that because of the rake, it's not a useful kind of dimension. It's very kind of triangular in here. It's quite long, but fairly shallow. There is some extra storage underneath the boot floor, but it's only really for a charging cable, although it is quite deep. Do you want to hear something comical though? The Jiyue Robocar can be had with an auto-deploying spoiler that will deploy at 60 kilometers an hour. Now, if you're from a country that doesn't use kilometers an hour, that's a lot slower than it sounds. But apparently you need the extra downforce at 37 miles an hour. Our car doesn't actually have it, so we better be careful doing those slow turns. Automatic doors are a nuisance, and I think we should petition to have them outlawed. In order to open an automatic door, you have to relearn how to open a door. Normally you would stand here and pull the handle, but if you do that, instead what you have to do is you have to sneak up on the door in order to be out of its way. And that is fine if you like to chauffeur everybody who gets into your car. If not, good luck explaining to them they need to move out of the way so the door can open. Not only that, but if somebody parks reasonably close to you, they now become kind of manual doors without the convenience of a handle. Do you like fingerprints because the location of the door opening button here on the gloss black plastic means that between car washes you'll be able to identify every single passenger by simple CSI tactics. Now this is special. You can actually control the voice assistant from outside of the car, although you might look a little odd doing it. Hi, Simo.
我在。
门打开。
好的。
But in order to use the voice assistant to its absolute max, you need to be speed rapping like Busta Rhymes, like blah, 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 blah. Make sure that you put Busta Rhymes over me, otherwise I'm going to sound absolutely ridiculous.
Hi Simo， 打开空调，打开收音机，打开车门，打开车窗。
Open the door and jump in, and with a press of the brake pedal, the door will automatically close a la Rolls-Royce. What's not very Rolls-Royce-like is the interior materials in here. Now, 12 months ago, the materials in here would have been completely acceptable for a car of this price point. Unfortunately, the Jiyue Robocar has kind of been a victim of the price wars, with cars that are meant to be much more expensive than this now occupying the same price. We actually have the upgraded interior package in here, which means that we have Napa leather that wraps around the door cards and the dashboard. Here normally is just some kind of micro suede, but even still, it's a little bit thin, and there's a lot of hard plastics elsewhere in this cabin. Is it cliche to say spaceship vibes in here? Let me address the elephant in the room, which is this humongous 35.6-inch screen powered by a Snapdragon 8295. I can barely reach the other side, but if you want to see an even bigger screen, go check out Ethan's review of the Galaxy E8. Now, even though it's extremely wide, it is only about half a screen tall, so there is no IMAX movie experience in here. The screen is actually split into 3 sections within inside the single panel. Behind the steering wheel, in front of the driver, is the kind of instrument cluster. Good thinking. And it's actually touchscreen, which is pretty cool. Now, I said earlier that you can't get a full IMAX experience in here. And that's true when you're watching a movie. So if you choose to watch something on here, it can be on the middle screen portion. You can choose to black out the rest of the screen and either have it in front of the driver or in front of the passenger, or you can even do a dual mode, so you have it in front of the driver and passenger at the same time. However, if you do want, say, a full screen experience in here, you can do that while playing a game. And if you just tap in and you choose a game, you'll end up with a huge widescreen version, and that looks pretty cool. There is one thing that really drives me mad about this screen, however, and it's the fact that it ends just here, just off center of the steering wheel. I would like it to go all the way across because it just drives my OCD a bit mad. Okay, fine, I'll talk about it. You can opt for a yoke. Long story short, I wouldn't. In its defense, it does give you a great view and access to the instrument panel section of the screen, which is actually a touch screen, and you do need to touch it in order to initiate the auto park. But for everything else, it's a proper pain. It's 1.5 locks either way. So in tight situations and car parks, U-turns, it's a right faff. However, I do have a solution for it. I didn't say it was an elegant solution. Probably just opt for the wheel. There are no other buttons in this central area. Everything is controlled by that big screen, even the gear selector. And although there are buttons for indicating on the steering wheel, this car actually has automatic indicators. However, they only turn on when you're about halfway through a turn, so they're not really indicating anything because you're already doing it. I'm not a fan of these cup holders. They seem like an absolute world away. They're a proper stretch to get things in and out of them. One useful thing that Jiyue has done in this Gundam sort of way is label things. For example, storage. Thanks, Jiyue. As well as up here, robo sound on the speakers. Now it's an 8-speaker system as standard with an optional 18-speaker. Going back to the middle here, you have this kind of large floating center console with a charging pad up top here, but it's kind of quite big and the rubber is kind of hard and slippery. It really makes me feel like my phone is going to slip around as I drive. It's also only 15 watts, which is a little bit behind the times compared to everybody else that are pushing out single or dual wireless chargers with 50 watts. You have a split central storage back here. It's decently deep, couple of USBs and a 12 volt in here. Sitting in the back of the Jiyue 01, there is quite a lot of space back here. I mean, you'd expect it with a 3-meter long wheelbase. I've got loads of leg room to stretch out and I can easily get my feet under the seat in front. This seat actually is in the auto exit mode, so it would actually go forwards into my driving position once I started to drive the car, so there would be even more rear legroom space here. Headroom is also pretty good. I'm not that tall, 5'7", but still I've got 2 fists between me and the huge overhead panoramic roof, which is also tinted to try to keep it cooler in here. As for other features back here, you've got a small screen down there in the center, and that can control the 3rd zone AC as well as the music and obviously the volume. Below that, you've got a couple of USB-Cs and a pocket back here for something about this big. So not quite for a phone. You also have a reading light and a couple of cup holders here in a central armrest, which is nice and wide. The seats are actually pretty comfortable back here. They're kind of sculpted so you can get into a comfortable position, even though there is no recline back here or massage or anything like that, which sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's fast becoming a standard of premium cars. You also have access to the voice assistant back here. There's 4 zones inside the car as well as outside of the car. Hi Simo.
你说，
窗户打开.
好的。
Fast. Hi Simo,
你说，
Kai Chong Dienko.
好的，
Now all Jiyue O1s have the same fast charging speed, 10 to 80% in around half an hour. What you might not have seen before is this. There are 4 LED lights down here on the rocker panel, and each light represents 25% state of charge. So we have 2 lights, therefore we have around 50% state of charge. The problem is you could just look at your app or your phone widget and see the state of charge to the percent. So I'm not sure why you need this. Feels a little bit like a gimmick to me. The Jiyue O1 has 3 trims. You can get the base rear-wheel drive single motor with a 71.4 LFP pack with a claimed 550 kilometers of range, or you can get this, the super long range rear-wheel drive single motor version with a 100 kilowatt hour NCM pack with a claimed 720 kilometers, obviously the longest range in the Jiyue O1. You can get the same 100 kilowatt hour pack for the performance model, but that's going to yield you a lower 660 kilometers claimed range. This super long range rear wheel drive model does the dash in 6.9 seconds, middle of the pack. The base rear wheel drive motor does it a tad slower at 7.2 seconds, and the performance version will chop that down to 3.8 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. Both rear-wheel drive models have the same 200 kilowatt motor with 343 Newton meters of torque. The difference in acceleration comes down to battery size and thus weight. For that quicker acceleration, the performance models get an extra motor on the front axle, doubling power output to 400 kilowatts and 686 Newton meters. All trims come with a double wishbone front suspension and a multi-link independent in the rear, and both rear-wheel drive models use just springs. But the ride in this super long range version is well dampened, and it's comfortable in here. I was actually surprised about how much road communication you actually get driving this. Now, the top model, the performance model, does come with CDC, which this model doesn't have, so I can't speak directly to that, but going off of my previous experience with Geely products, I'll say that it probably rides really well. On road, this long range single motor drove decently. Around corners it was steady and body roll was well controlled, but honestly the yoke was holding me back. I just didn't feel like I was adjusted to using it. Sometimes when maneuvering or tight turning, I'd reach for where the top of the wheel would be and giving myself a little fright when it wasn't there. Apart from that, this does everything right on road. The pedals are nicely weighted and the steering has a nice weight too. This car doesn't try to drive in a sporty way, not at least this rear-wheel drive model, but I'm all for that. Most buyers just want something that is comfortable and competent on road. Just skip the yoke. In terms of ADAS, the Jiyue O1 uses cameras, radar and ultrasonic radars, and as standard you get something called Robo Drive, which is basically a lane keep assist and ACC function. If you want Jiyue O1's full-blooded ADAS system, then you'll have to pay $7,000 to get the Robo Drive Max system. But right now, if you buy a Jiyue O1 before May 31st, they'll give it to you for free. ADAS was a big focus of the Jiyue O1 when it was announced, with joint venture owner Baidu providing their Apollo vision-only ADAS system. For those who don't know Baidu Apollo, it's the part of Baidu that's responsible for the Baidu driverless robo-taxis. Think Waymo. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Jiyue's RoboDrive Max is the sole vision-only, non-LiDAR ADAS system offering city NOA in China right now. Xpeng, NIO, Li Auto and Huawei all use LiDAR for their city ADAS, and well, Tesla FSD Beta isn't here yet. Now that RoboDrive Max, basically Jiyue's FSD Beta competitor, is available right now as a beta option in a few major cities in China. But Jiyue say that in the second half of 2024, it will go to a full public release, and it will be available anywhere that Baidu has HD maps. And with Baidu being one of the largest map providers in China, that's going to be many, many places. In the Chinese EV market, speed is key. Today's standout features are everyone's norms tomorrow. And I just feel for the Jiyue O1, it was a little bit slow off the starting blocks. It's an interesting joint venture between Geely and Baidu with its fantastic voice assistant and promises of leading ADAS by Baidu. I expect interesting things from this joint venture going forwards.